We're back, so sorry for the few problems we already had. We counted our tech problems right now, and I think Luca can hear us. Luca?
I can still hear you. The question is, can you hear me?
We can hear you perfectly. I think on your side,
wonderful.
we turned a bit more down. It's right now a bit loud. So maybe Carlo can figure that out. Actually, just handed to you. Maybe, okay, we can still hear you when you talk, Luca. So one short question. What is your panel all about? Just give us a short intro and then we're leaving stage right now. Now we need you a bit louder. I think it's going always the wrong way around. I think it's very
okay.
precise.
Is it better now?
Yeah, just leave it like that. I think it should work.
Okay. Yeah, this is a wonderful introduction we just had from Cillian Lohan. Our next panel will also be on this intersection between circular economy and digitalization. So I think mainly we'll speak about all the effects that this digitalization wave over the past decades had on business models. Did they become more circular? But of course, we will also talk about the aspect of digital devices that all of us have nowadays. Probably most have several. So this will probably be the two components of digitalization and circularity.
Okay, then I think we leave you to it just maybe for our participants, because I see some participants want to join the session. If I understood it right, for now it's just the speakers going on screen. The participants can put their Q&A in the chat, and later on maybe they have a chance, depending on time, to jump in with you, right?
Exactly. I would ask all our participants to think about questions they would have for our speakers, and then we can just collect them in the Q&A session on the right, and you can also up or down vote questions. And if we have sufficient time, I will also invite you on stage so you can ask your questions.
Okay, so Anusha, I think we grab a coffee, watch the panel, and leave you. Luca, have fun. Welcome to all the speakers, and I think from our part we're out.
Well, maybe I can start already by thanking again Mr. Cillian Lohan for this great introduction into our first topic today. So we will stay with this topic and keep talking about the intersection of digitalization and circular economy. And for that, we have invited 4 very interesting guests, 2 of which you already see on stage, and we hope they will be joined by the other 2 just in a minute. So please join me in welcoming first Rosalina Petrova. Please, by the way, tell me if I pronounce your names right. She works on circular issues in the cabinet of the EU Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries. Also, we have with us today Shariar Mahmoud, who is Director of Sustainability at Spinnova Oy from Helsinki. It's a firm that wants to provide the fashion industry with the most sustainable fiber. I think, Shariar, you will tell us more about your business model later on. Then, now also visible, very happy to see you. Good morning, Adriana Neligan, Senior Economist at the very influential German Economic Institute, and she has done research before on this intersection of digitalization and circular economy. And our last guest, last but not least, hope you will join us any second, is John Mark Simon, Executive Director of the EU NGO Zero Waste Europe. Welcome all. So I just suggest we dive into it because we're already 10 minutes late. So Adriana, I would like to ask you first. I had a look at your most recent research, and while I think that it is quite intuitive that through digital surveillance of industry production, firms can achieve a more efficient production, so lower resource input and thus lower costs, what would you say are some other firm benefits?
Well, one of the main reasons industries have traditionally looked into aspects of resource efficiency, which is not only just reducing the amount of resources being used, but it can also go into this whole circular aspect of multiple use. How can we reuse? How can we recycle? How can we, like at the process level? There's also the way that you can also look into aspects of product design. How can I increase recyclability, etc.? Or another point is, if you look into resource efficiency, it's not only use less and multiple use, it's also you can replace. So traditionally, like industrial companies have looked at this aspect from a cost aspect, because they want to minimize costs, and that's what you just mentioned. But it is also they want to reduce waste is another like main point they made in my survey, and also aspects like how can we actually contribute to reduce emissions and waste to protect the environment. So it's not only like nowadays that they look, well, the cost aspect is still, the optimization aspect is still the most relevant, but other aspects are coming up more. And what was interesting, and what I think is a big issue, is that they still not really, like I had a survey, a representative survey undertaken for German firms last year, and what is still not the main thing is that they want to go into new business models. You know, when they look into resource efficiency, they don't, like, only an avant-garde is doing this at the moment. So I think there is still a lot of potential there still, because I think if we want to move to a circular economy, we have to look at how we can do business differently in future. And I think integrating circularity into business model is one of the kind of key levers for moving towards a circular economy.
Okay, thanks a lot. We will, of course, come back to this transition to what you could name a real circular economy, because I think we can all agree that we are not there right now. But first, I want on your research. In Germany, you and your colleagues found that digitalization until now accounts for approximately 1% less resources and energy needed on average. That is not very much, and your estimated current possible savings actually amount up to 8%. So there's a huge difference there. What's missing?
Okay. First of all, I'm very grateful to hear that people are reading our research, because usually I have to explain first what we actually calculated. Well, in our survey, we asked the companies how much material and how much energy they were able to save over the past 5 years, and then we asked them how high was the contribution through digital technologies. And yeah, it is true, it is only kind of a minor part yet, but we also calculate that there's a high potential, and one of the ways to kind of get this potential out is digitalization. It's not the necessary prerequisite. You can also increase resource efficiency or become more circular without using digital tools, but it is one of the things that are kind of now available, and all industries are kind of moving towards more kind of digital optimization techniques. So it is one way that maybe in particular SMEs are looking into it anyway, and they might not look into getting more into this kind of industry 4.0 just for the sake of circularity or resource efficiency, but it is one way kind of to get this as part of it. So I don't think a small, in an SME, like that's what basically my German firms answered, as are going to reduce their resources or look into ways of multiple use just for the sake, like, and use digital just for the sake of this, but they are digitalizing anyway, and one of the basically effects can be that they become more circular.
It's an interesting point, and luckily enough, we have a firm here today that is trying to become more circular. Welcome also, Jean-Marc. Sorry for the technical issues. We have just started. You haven't missed too much. Happy to have you here.
I was listening, so no worries.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, Shahria, I would like to ask you to very briefly explain to us Spinnova's business model and the role digitalization plays in it and in the effort to become more circular up to now. We can't hear you. You're still muted.
Some of what happens always. Yeah, thanks, Luca. So two elements there. I think one is circularity. We consider ourselves as an enabler for circularity through our innovation. And second thing is the digitalization, or how basically it is helping us to proceed forward, because we are still in the very early stage company. We have established in 2015 and still proceeding towards the commercialization. In 2022, we are expecting to be commercial scale already. So we have, I suppose, progressed quite extensively compared to other startups. Yeah, so Spinnova has a technology basically which produces textile fiber, or let's say fiber, which can be produced in other applications also from the wood pulp or from the wood. And that's basically nothing new. We are producing the fiber from the wood for I think tens of years already through the old technologies like, let's say, viscose processing and so on. But what is very, very important to understand from Spinnova's technology is it's separating or differentiating from all other technologies that is available at the moment. So all other technology to produce the fiber from the wood pulp uses the chemical intensive processing, but in our case we use the mechanical process. So it's fully mechanical. There is no chemical processes at all, which means that we just take the raw kraft pulp that practically you are using for producing the paper or cardboard and so on. And that kraft raw pulp we can convert directly to the fiber and fully through a mechanical process. And most important thing is that, for example, we have done some kind of analysis and found that it is significantly less amount of water consumption, like 99% compared to cotton, and very, very less energy consumption, of course. And I think the raw material or process input wise, we use only the heat that produces some carbon footprint, but which is much less compared to the synthetic fibers that we see typically in the market. Yeah, and the technology itself is very much scalable, and we have find it out that it is scalable, and we are working on it, as I mentioned. But what we have done, I think, very importantly, from the very beginning, we have taken the approach of data management or data transparency. So it's very important that especially the textile industry, the fashion industry is going towards the transparency. We are talking a lot about the circularity, about the sustainability, and sustainability is a very big umbrella. There's a lot of elements there, and of course circularity is there. And as we are kind of thinking ourselves as an enabler for the circular economy, because with our technology we able to get back the fiber or the product again, the textile product again, and we can put back into our stream so that you can again produce the fiber of the same quality, that like the virgin one. So that's, I think, the largest benefit of our process. But coming back to the digitalization, we actually have been maintaining the data from the very beginning up to the end. In order to understand that, you have to understand what is our product. So typically we are, as based on core technology, we are a fiber producer, but as a product wise, we have, for example, the yarn and also the final fabric that you can utilize for different kind of applications, especially in the fashion industry and other related industries. So what we want to do that from the pulp up to, or even from the nursery up to the final product, we want to have a full transparency and want to provide that, okay, for example, that a specific pulp lot that we have got, and there are several processes. I have told it in a very simple way that you just take the pulp and get the fiber. It's not as simple as that. There are many different phases, and of course you have to really carry on that in each and every phase you have this different kind of data you are managing so that it's linked. For example, if you take a final fabric, you should be able to say from where the wood came from. So from which wood you have made it. Let's say we are talking about FSC certification. We are working on that. So for the FSC certification, you really need to know that what raw material you have used, if it is FSC certified raw material or not. So even for that, we have to really know that each and every lot we are using for producing the fiber, yarn, and fabric, we know each and everything. So practically, we have developed a system, digital system as such that in our mobile device, we have the app. So if I take a yarn, we are able to say that which fiber lot you have used and which, let's say, pulp lot you have been using. So it's let's say from end to end, fully transparent. And one thing to add that we have so-called very automated system, digital system, so that from the process we get the what is called the runtime data, so that quite what's the right word? I'm really missing the right word. So it's a live data, so that what is happening in the production line, you are getting the data immediately into our system. So I think that's helping a lot.
Right,
yeah.
So if I got that right, there's basically two dimensions to digitalization at Spinnova. On the one side, you want to achieve full transparency and make sure that all consumers, not only the end consumer, can see where the material is from, all the material you use. And on the other side, you use data to monitor your production process.
Absolutely.
What would you say are some... That's linked. Yeah, right, makes sense. What would you say are some hurdles for further digitalization?
Well, I think that's, you have now mentioned that, for example, even in the consumer level, if someone wants to see that from where it came from. So I think that's something we have to work on further. And we have a pretty strong digital team, although we are a very early stage company, but we have a very strong digital team who is working on developing different kind of data system and working, of course, together with the other external experts. But I would say that we are in a shape of having control of all of our data that we need in our processes, from our raw material and up to the, so in the downstream of the supply chain and the upstream part of the supply chain, and we ourselves, Spinnova. So all the data is transparent for us. But I think the next phase will be that it is, if we want to enable also that a consumer who actually has produced, let's say, a shirt, will be able to see also from where it came from. So that will be, I think, something. Of course, that's really depend on the brands, let's say, who are our partners.
So you would say there is no regulatory hurdles you face in, or maybe even a situation in the market that stops you from further making your business model more digital. I mean, maybe you don't even want to become more circular. Maybe you don't need to. But if so, are there some hurdles that Spinnova faces or will probably face in the upcoming years?
Yeah, I think as such, I might say that just in the borderline that there is no as such that can be really restricting our progress. but definitely we are facing the hurdle each and every time, because there is no one system fit for all type of some solution available. So we have to start it from the scratch, and we have to start it from the very zero. And we have started the approach because we know that there is not something available for such kind of, the technology is very unique, the process is very unique, so we need to develop our own unique way to manage the data. So I think we are facing the hurdle each and every moment almost, but I think external policy wise, at least it is beyond my knowledge.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Then I would like to ask the rest of the panelists an open question. Maybe whoever wants to go first. So we have heard already in the keynote that data, of course, is at the heart of digitalization, and business models that rely on the digitalization also rely on, to some extent, on a free flow of data. Of course, on the other hand, you have legitimate privacy issues, you have corporate secrets. How can we find a balance here? If you can answer that question in such a general way.
I can say something if...
Yes, of course, please go ahead.
Well, one of the major kind of outcomes of our study was that like companies face certain challenges, and one of the major challenges is that they need good infrastructure. If you want to digitalize, you need good broadband, you need 5G, you need everything in rural areas as well, because like in many other countries, in particular in Germany, a lot of very successful small and medium enterprises are in rural areas, and they've had problems with data issues or networking issues for a long time. So that's one kind of prerequisite I think is really important. And another thing, and that's something that has to be solved at EU level, is data security. And I think as long as firms are not sure what's happening with their data, because a lot of the data are secrets. So, you know, you don't want to open up your kind of special ingredients or special parts, you know, you're using, and who's your supplier, etc. You don't want to open up that to everybody. So I think one major issue is data security, and that what came out of our survey. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, it's like a lot of companies don't know yet, in particular SMEs, how to start this digital process. So they're not sure where they're standing, what they can use it for, etc. So I think that's one of the things that has to be enhanced, that smaller companies in particular are enhanced to see. They need to see their status quo when it comes to circularity or resource efficiency, but they also need to see where they're standing when it comes to using digital tools, because the majority of firms are still only using digital tools to collect data and to look into interfaces now at this point. But there's so many more digital tools, advanced digital tools, which could be used to simulate, to avoid kind of prototypes to be produced, but just, you know, by you doing it on the computer. So to finish up, it's kind of, you know, we are just going forward in small steps.
Lina, maybe you can also say something on this. I mean, it's not your area of concentration, so to say, but after the GDPR, the EU has, like all around the world, been labeled either as a privacy heaven or privacy hell, depending on the use of data of the stakeholder. Now the privacy regulation is on the way too. So we move in a direction of ever-growing regulation of data and privacy in the EU, in the internal market. Do you think that we are progressing towards a sufficient framework to make it easy for digital business models to work with data?
Thank you very much for these questions. Of course, those frameworks, first of all, indeed, thank you for inviting me to this panel. I heard already a lot of interesting contributions, and then it's really quite inspiring indeed how quickly this field is developing, and indeed all those relevant angles that could actually promote together the green and digital transition, which we so much also try to push from the EU level as well through our Green Deal, but also through the digital agenda, digital compass, and so on and so forth. So indeed, what it's important to get those framework conditions right as regards data and as regards the green agenda. So I think that both are very necessary to get right. And when we are talking about for instance, sharing information, traceability, of course, we are not talking about opening up all the information and data that a company has completely to all the world, to its competitors. We are talking about sharing relevant data. So that is also something that is because that could be relevant for consumers. Here we are talking also about the green transition, so it's not about all data. Of course, when what Adriana talked about is, for instance, the use of digital technologies for more efficient use of resources, for waste reduction. So here the company indeed itself has to avail of all the necessary data that it requires in order to make sure that it optimizes, also reduces in this way the impact on the environment. When we are talking about traceability, we are talking, let's say, about more limited data elements that we would need also for disclosure. And the work here is just starting. And for instance, as part of the Sustainable Product Policy Initiative, that was also mentioned, we are thinking about a digital passport for products. So that would be, let's say, all this relevant information that needs to be passed on along the value chain in order to ensure traceability, transparency, and also comparability. And of course, the technical solution, and this is also what Shahriar referred to, is very important because indeed it has to be also usable by everybody. And also privacy needs to be protected. So that's also very important. I mean, we have to find a way to deal with these trade-offs, because it's not one or the other. It's in a way, the digitalization, it happens continuously. At the same time, we have to make sure that indeed the rights of consumers, of privacy are protected, because otherwise it would not work. I mean, if the privacy regulations do not work, then it may become a barrier to further digitalization, because people are quite sensitive about sharing their data. Companies are quite sensitive about sharing this data, so we have to find a way to deal with all these elements, basically. And and it's a challenge, but this is exactly what we are working on. And for instance, we already have proposed to have product passports for one important value chain. This is a very specific product, but it's linked to a lot of environmental impacts, because there are hazardous materials on it. There are also a lot of issues related to sourcing of key materials for batteries, and then batteries are also essential for digital transition as well, because and for the green transition. So the demand there is going to become exponential. And this is where we have actually proposed a regulation where we have foreseen to develop develop those digital passports for batteries, which would include many relevant elements of environmental information. And then the idea is also that this passports really goes with the product, so that until the very last stages, so basically also end of life, when batteries can be repurposed, so either reused directly or repurposed, or if those options are not the most efficient, they can be recycled, and then they are materials that they can actually re-enter the economic cycle. So this is something very, very important.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will actually. I would actually like to come back to this concept of digital product passports later. But first, I would like to stay with the access to data and knowledge for firms. And maybe this would be a question for you, Jean-Marc. Research has shown that many firms, and I think most often those are small and medium enterprises, have no sufficient knowledge on resource efficiency, and probably digital resource efficiency. The same is true for that. So I think this also connects to the work you have done during the past years. How do you think can we improve access to existing knowledge, kind of the low-hanging fruits here?
Yeah, and thanks for the invitation. That's an interesting question, because honestly, what I'm seeing is that there's a lot of SMEs for example, in the field of reusable packaging, food to go, etc., that are basically basing their business model on the digital economy. They need to have access to like a variety of customers. They need to connect the dots, etc. So actually, it is true that for some, if you want, more traditional SMEs, this access might be difficult, but I see also that there are loads of social enterprises and that are really using digitalization as a key instrument in their business model. So I think it depends sector by sector. And I would add as well that the same question we could ask about the big companies as well. Because digitalization, I mean, of course, they have access to their own data, but I see sometimes more reluctancy among big companies to use like these new tools, because they involve transparency, they involve actually engaging with the customer, they involve basically a challenge the business model as they know it traditionally, and which actually causes that. Well, I'll just give you an example, but if you take the example of extended producer responsibility schemes for packaging, what we're seeing is that the reason why this has not been working properly is precisely because the big fast-moving consumer goods were not sharing their data. So there was no transparency on the allocation of costs. So the fees were a political exercise as a result. And that caused actually that lots of waste was produced. With the digital agenda, it allows actually, there's no excuse for not being able to trace all of this. So I see that the big companies are sometimes reluctant to actually change the business model. But again, I would say it's a case by case. I see that some SMEs see lots of inspiring examples in small companies and social enterprises.
Okay, is there anything to add to that? Because if not, I would like to talk about exactly that, incentivizing, because of course for a profit-oriented firm, it might not make sense to publish data, even if they are gathered and even if they are, or they would be important for other business models to close the loop. So maybe a lot of firms would just need a small incentive to share those data, which very often, especially if it's standardized data, is not a huge effort for the firm, but still an effort that is probably not undertaken if there's direction. So how could we incentivize data sharing, gathering of data that is not a huge effort for firms and maybe also for the public side, for ministries or other public actors that gather data? How can we incentivize data sharing more?
Well, I think one major thing is that if you want to use digitalization to become more circular, that you have to think both topics together. And at the end of the day, well, I've undertaken a lot of workshops with firm representatives. When it comes down to it, the relevant part is for them, where's the beef? Where can I make money with? So it has to be clear. If I change my business model and share my data for this, there has to be a benefit that has to be clear to them. So what our survey showed is that a lot of companies don't really see the benefits of new circular business models. So I think they would need some advice. If you're talking about how can kind of public policy help incentivize companies to create or to become more circular, or to become more circular. So one thing is they need more information, they need more advice, they need kind of we need more research and education, we need prototypes, we need learning fabrics. Like when it comes to digitalization, we need kind of basically examples that show you the benefits. So I think by opening this up and by incentivizing, that's really interesting. And I think you have to think both topics together. And that was one major kind of result of our study. It's not being thought together, in particular in big companies, because big companies have a department for digital things, and they have a department for resource efficiency or circularity, recycling, whatever it is, what they're doing. So I think you have to bring that together, and then you can advance digitalization and share your data, because it has to become clear to them, and a lot of them are not very clear on that issue.
So you think it's rather about having successful business models to kind of inspire others and less about monetary incentives? Or is it a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of many factors, but besides our basically extensive study, we also developed a brochure for SMEs, and we had like 6 or 7 case studies in there, which were kind of best practice examples. We interviewed them in an extensive qualitative expert interview process, and they were all kind of companies that have been adventurous and just started something that is a bit different, and that kind of was a big success, because I think very often there's a lack of idea what I can do. Like if I can just introduce one example, there's a company that basically produces everything that's inside a ship or a yacht or a caravan, like basically a sofa, everything that's kind of upholstered. And they bought an old kind of furniture company and revamped it completely, made it completely digital. And now they've reduced their kind of waste so much that it has become such a successful kind of business case, because just by reducing demand, so it can be small things, that can reduce costs. And yeah, there are many other examples, but unfortunately all the brochures are in German, but I'm happy to, if anybody wants to know more about it, to talk about it in more detail and more.
I think actually in our next panel, we have invited a few other very promising startups that will maybe inspire you and also probably have websites in English. So I think we can deliver there, but I'd like to go more in the direction of policies. So please, everyone feel welcome to speak. What do you think are the most effective and maybe some overlooked policies? Because the EU has been doing a lot. I won't judge those policies here, but they have been doing a lot over the past decades. But where do you think, where are also member states maybe overlooking chances to foster circularity with the right policies?
If I speak out a bit. Yeah, so I think I will talk more about the technical side. So enabling the circularity, I think it's very important from the policy wise. I think, for example, in the textile industry, we have the greatest problem. I think that most of the products are not easily recyclable. So when the products are not recyclable, I mean, whatever you try to do, whatever technology you develop, it's not really completely supporting the whole thing to enable the circular economy. And I think the major challenge is that if I go to very root, that all of the textiles, or most of the textiles that we produce, are blended. So blending with the synthetics, with the natural fiber, or natural blending, or the synthetic blending. Not necessarily all these different kind of fibers can be recycled by one technology. So if you take a single fiber, it can be recycled with a technology. You take another fiber, that also can be recycled through a technology. For example, Spinnova is a very good example, that if you take any cellulosic product, let's say it is Spinnova and it is blended with cotton, so it can be take back into our stream and we can really recycle it very easily. We have done it as a proof of concept. So I think policy here could have a big role, that for the future, that how much this blending can be acceptable. I don't know, this is just out of the box thinking, that do you really allow to produce all the material or the products that is in market, all are blended, and also adding so many different components. We know that the circularity starts really from the design stage, and in this design stage, basically you are locking that whether the product can be circular or not. So in that case, I think policy could help really that to force the designers to produce such product that can be truly circular. And otherwise, whatever fantastic material, let's say Spinnova itself is recyclable material, it's a biodegradable material, but that's not really helping, because in the later stage, if you blend it, combine with something synthetic or something else, fiber or other components, then it will not be any more recyclable. So I think that's something can have a look for the future.
Thanks. Rosalina, could you maybe give us a brief introduction into the EU eco-design provisions? I think there has been an update under the new Circular Economy Action Plan for digital devices. You spoke about batteries earlier, but I think eco-design provisions are actually in place for several branches, right?
Thank you. Indeed, so the Eco-Design Directive has been there for a while, and it has brought a lot of benefits. For now, it is restricted to energy-related products. So basically, of course, electronic devices are in, and of course, the let's say the flagship impact which Eco-Design addresses is energy use, and that's why that's part of its success, because it let's say not only contributes to more energy efficiency, which also makes the use of those devices lighter on the climate and then the other pollution that energy production creates, but so they provide cost-saving opportunities to citizens, because this also shows on your energy bill, and that is why it's a successful formula as such, where you have a win-win between, let's say, the environment and then consumers, and then also it has been good for producers as well, because it has really driven innovation, and it has become, actually, it has driven global standards, because a lot of those producers of electronic are also outside the EU. So it has been quite successful. And now with the new Circular Economy Action Plan that we adopted last year, and with our work currently, we would like to extend the approach of eco-design to other products as well. So textiles are indeed one of the those products which have until now quite escaped regulation. So that is, but they have huge impact on the environment, be it on climate or on pollution, and then of course when they become waste, in the end, very few of them are recycled. For the reasons that Shahriar also mentioned, that they are not recyclable. Actually, there is a lot of mixture of various fibers. But the idea is really to present an overall framework where we deal not only then with energy efficiency, but also with other impacts. For instance, let's say hazardous chemicals, and then or water impacts, or some other impacts that are there, and then to extend it not only to energy-related products but also to others. As regards electronic devices, we are also looking at making them more efficient, better repairable, so that that you don't have to throw away the device, also upgradable, but that you can really all this repairability, reusability, upgradability is built in from the design stage, really. So that let's say there is the obsolescence of those products is counteracted, so that we don't have products that after several years we cannot use anymore. And that will be quite a difficult equation to deal with, but and it has really to be specific, because we also have our internal market, and we might want to make sure that whatever is good to sell in one country is also good to sell for all the rest. So that's why we cannot leave this to the member states. So that is something where we need really European rules of the game, because the internal market is a very important achievement, and we would like to uphold it, and then also to spread indeed those benefits throughout the EU. So there is a lot to say, but I think that really this crosscut between let's say green and digital is quite exciting, because it really brings a lot of opportunities. And I already talked about the product passport, where basically this passport could carry data along the supply chains to retailers, users, repairables, recyclers, and then I think we can deal with data issues as well. For instance, now we have a very big database on hazardous substances in products, where at the same, the security issues in many ways are solved. But also it has created quite a lot, because a lot of the electronics also contains those hazardous substances. But it also showed in a way how difficult it can be to introduce such provisions, because they also mean a lot of costs to the companies, and then the benefits are not always immediate. So although in several years' time or in the longer term there could be some benefits, there is always also an initial investment that is needed. And what you actually asked with the previous questions, what are the incentives? This is a very important element that we also should be able to show to companies, that what they are actually doing on data and the environment can actually bring benefits. And then of course, this is only a part of the story, and there are many other, let's say, possibilities to use digitalization. For instance, there could be virtualization of products to reduce material consumptions. There could be more efficient product use via the Internet of Things, more efficient materials handling. And then also better design of products and then processes. For instance, if you have more widespread 3D printing of spare parts, which also linked about with let's say data on how those parts should look like. This could also have lead to product life extension. So there are all these kind of promising technologies, and then at the same time we are also looking at the dark side of the digitalization, I would call it, because because oh, this is super cool, of course, but digitalization does not also go without its environmental impacts. We have already the articles where one transaction of cryptocurrency could equal the household consumption of 2 months, and that is something also that has to be addressed, the dark side of digitalization. Also, we are expecting a lot of increase in electronic waste, and then that's why we want also as quickly as possible to develop those technologies. I mean that about those design requirements that we increase the longevity of products. We have to deal with data centers, which are huge consumers of electricity and water, and will be waste generators in the future as well. So it's a very complex agenda, and but I think that when we focus on it and then on the benefits and trying to, it's our preoccupation, but at the same time trying really to see what are those, let's say, challenges that we have to deal with, we could be quite successful, and we can see a lot of opportunities grow on this intersection.
So I understand the EU policy package has kind of two pillars, the one being classical regulation. For example, you were talking about digital devices being more repairable, easier to repair, easier to maintain, so kind of circularity by design. And on the other side, you have measures like these digital product passports, which I understand as a measure that kind of wants to foster transparency and by thus consumer behavior change. Jean-Marc, what do you think can this consumer behavior change, which I think past policies have relied on a lot in addressing all kinds of environmental problems? Is this the right way to go? Is this two-sided approach by the European Union sufficient? What do you think needs to change?
No, I agree with what Rosalina has said. I think that these are all the right questions. I think that the answers are not that straightforward, and that justifies, I think, why it takes so long to come up with a regulation on this. I think that consumers, definitely citizens, really have a role to play, and we have seen, like, for example, on the topic of plastic pollution, this is something that without like actually citizen mobilization, it's unlikely that things would have moved so quickly to fight plastic pollution. So I think it needs to go come from both sides. On the other hand, what we are seeing is that there's many citizens, and that's I think is one of the nice things of the current situation, is that lots of citizens are actually taking the initiative to develop the business models themselves with the tools that they have. And they all go in the direction of like building more resilient products at the local level that are labor intensive in combination with new technologies, and actually building the social fabric that is necessary. So for me, the question, the challenge, I think, is really how do you encompass the European approach and the regulations about all of this and all the stuff that is already moving. And I think that for the moment, you can actually encompass both, but definitely regulation goes a bit behind the innovations in this sector, when traditionally legislation has been there to actually to show the way. And of course the challenge is, do we want to have like the perfect legislation too late, or want to have like a good enough legislation early enough to actually to inform decisions? What we are seeing today is that consumers, for example, anywhere in Europe, you go to the supermarket and you can buy something in a package that says 100% recyclable, 100% recycled. This is greenwashing. This is false. It's not based on anything, and there's no regulatory intervention on this. So this is an example of like, for some things, I think intervention and regulatory intervention could come quite quick and soon. For some others, I think we need a bit more time. But again, the challenge is that we're trying to change the economy. It's not that we're trying to change a sector, ICT or packaging or textiles. We're trying to change everything at the same time. And I think that really like a bit compartmentalizing all of this, but creating the overarching systems, for example, with how do we generate data, how is this data stored, how is this data secured, to provide security to companies, but also to consumers. And also to not create confusion in the sense that there's like hundreds of labels out there. Citizens are confused because then you go to another country and the system changes, the labels change. So I think we should not have, we should guarantee freedom, but at the same time, we really need to reduce on the amount of polymers that we use, the amount of like materials that we blend into textiles, the amount of information we give to the consumers. So I think we need to make sense of the whole thing, try to do more with less in a simplified way, but that still delivers. And I think that is a challenge. And again, I think it has more questions than answers, but I think that we're going in the right direction.
Okay, thanks. Now I would like to ask our attendees again, if you have any questions, please ask them in the Q&A section. We will move on to Q&A in just a few minutes. Also, if you would like to speak, we can open your camera. Please type in the chat and then we can do this. But since we're talking about policies right now, Jean-Marc, what would be some proposals from Zero Waste Europe? What would you like to see happening as soon as possible, whether it be on EU level or on member state level, more individual approaches?
Well, this can be, and but maybe generally speaking, very quickly, I think that we need to change the mindset from going for single-use products to actually like making durable and reusable stuff the norm. So how do you translate that into policy? You can use targets, you can create actually many like design requirements for products to last longer. You can have the product passport, etc. But that's for me, if you want like an encompassing one thing. Second thing is on toxicity, since the products need to stay with us for a lot longer and we don't want to actually to externalize the cost anymore. We need to have transparency, but also we need to like really act to make sure that the products are safe to use and safe to be reintroduced into the material economy, in the sense that they should again be fully recyclable, reusable, repairable, etc. And last but not least, I think that all of this is happening in the context of an economic crisis. So we should factor in how does that impact society in terms of job creation, in terms of supporting the local economy. So for me, these are really the three legs: the environmental, the health, and the social aspects that need to be embedded in any new legislation that comes in. It needs to be good for the planet, it needs to be good for the people, and it needs to be good for business. So to summarize that would be it, otherwise it would be too long.
So you just mentioned the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, and there are a lot of NGOs and other stakeholders have been really focused on if the big packages that are rolled out right now on an EU level, but also on member state and on national levels around the world, really help to add to the transition. And the focus has mostly been on climate issues, and if carbon firms, carbon production get public funds. But do you think the transition that is ongoing in Europe right now, does it help to become a transition to a more circular economy, or is nothing really changing here right now?
If I may say something, I think
Please.
The mindset has changed. I think it's a long process. I think we're at the beginning, but when this first circular economy package came out, I think that there were a lot of new ideas in it because, for example, in Germany, the concept of a circular economy, which is called Kreislaufwirtschaft in German, was a concept that only was reduced to the aspect of waste and recycling. And the idea of a circular economy is much broader now. It's not only waste policy, it is product policy, because we want to avoid waste basically as the most important thing. We don't want even to get resources into the system or produce too much waste. So and I think that's why this whole issue with product design are basically one of the key things. But still, it is a process, and we have established business models, we have established regulation, and we have to see that we have coherent regulation as well, because moving towards a circular economy and some of the ideas in the action plans might not be coherent, might be incoherent with other regulations. When it comes to, for example, Jean-Marc mentioned plastic waste, like when it comes to food packaging, how can we solve that problem that hygienic regulations are brought in? So we need a lot of more coherence and consistency, and this is not an easy issue. But I'm in touch with a lot of kind of employers associations and company representatives, and circular economy, I mean, like 2016-17 was not really a big deal we were talking about. And now basically it's part of their image. So it's like they're moving towards, and in certain areas, in particular in the chemical industry where it's very resource intensive, there's some kind of big companies that have made it as part of the sustainability agenda, and I think that's I think that's a step forward. It's not maybe the solution to have a circular economy yet, but I think we need to change the paradigm, the mindsetting, and then that's the precondition to be able to change things. People have to understand what we're trying to do.
Thanks. So maybe now it's time to pick some of the questions from the audience. I think the one with the most upvotes is from Elena Sofia Ferretti, and she asked, do you think changes from institutional players are enough to foster circularity if there is no willingness coming from the majority of the general population? So a very classic question, which has always been asked about climate change as well. What is your stance on it, everybody?
Maybe, I think I touched on it a bit before. I think people care about this. The reason is because you don't see the impact of climate change on your everyday life, but you see how much waste you generate. You see the impacts that it is having in your life, and you can see actually how, if you take the right decision, you're going to save money, or you're going to like have a healthier lifestyle, etc., etc. So I think as Adriana has said, I think the mindset has changed. People care about this. So it's a matter of maybe speaking the same language, because sometimes they will think, why is the European Union imposing this on us? But actually, it's not imposing, it's creating the framework for them to get what they actually want. And I think the example of plastic packaging is a very good example of how this has changed.
If I may, on my side as well, of course, we whenever we do a policy, we don't just sit on our desks and then try to think what should we now do and impose it on the population. No, it's not the way. It's rather especially at European level, decision making is the result of indeed really a level playing field, and raising questions from really the majority of the population. And you can see this very clearly when we have our Eurobarometer studies, which are also widely available, that basically everybody is concerned about the environment from the citizens, and they would like us to actually take measures to reduce waste, to increase recycling, and it's of course then our responsibility to take the measures that are the most suitable and that really make sense, and that would really make a difference. So actually we have been hearing citizens for quite some time that they would like to make a change. And now what is actually very good is that not only citizens, but all the institutional actors and also business starts being more and more interested into that. And when we look now at the World Economic Forum report of their major risks for basically growth on a global level, actually, out of the 10 top risks, 5 are environmental. So that is something that really is not only our citizens, but also our companies and network leaders in business are pushing on the alarm button and saying that something has to be done, because otherwise we can lose a lot of well-being and wealth, actually, if we don't act. And of course, in every policy making, there are what we call the low-hanging fruits, or things that can be easily done. And although eco-design is not easy at all, I mean, there are colleagues that work day and night on all those different criteria. As I said, it's a win-win situation, because we get a better product. Then, of course, when such product becomes the norm, then the prices drop, because everybody is busy on working on this product, and then it also impacts your energy bill because you pay less, and so it's a clear win-win situation. There are some other situations where there is a kind of greater transition needed, but this is where what we really want with the new product policy initiative is to make the sustainable product policy the norm. I mean, products the norm, because I don't believe myself too much on putting all the burden on consumers, because consumers, when you go shopping, you have to buy, let's say, 20, 30, 40, 50 items from let's say, when you do. How much time do you have really to take a decision on every single item? Mostly people, those decisions, they are motivated by different things, and then the environment is not always there. I mean, because let's say if you buy food, you may want to have something tasty, what you like, you look at the packaging, what you've seen on TV. So there are all these kind of things. So that's why our basic preoccupation is not to put the burden on consumers, but try to have those basic rules that will ensure that everything which is on the shelves is sustainable to a certain extent. Of course, there is also a place for the top sustainability items, and there we try to promote our eco labels. We work on the organic label as well, and so on and so forth. But this basic rules of the game, which makes all the companies actually compete, and which also gets prices lower, are quite important. And actually, indeed, on plastics, the single-use plastic directives, where a number of plastic items will be banned, and then for some we have the targets to or the objectives to reduce significantly consumption. It actually came from an overwhelming public opinion based on the pictures and our knowledge of what plastic causes to wildlife, to our oceans, the fact that it's everywhere, from Arctic ice to the beer that we drink, and this is really something where there is a lot of public, let's say, outcry and need to act. So I would say that actually we are quite well served by our citizens for our environmental policies, and then it's also our responsibility to make the best out of this credit of confidence that we currently have. Thanks.
Okay, thanks a lot. Maybe we'll come to another question. I think if you can scroll up a little bit, Carlo. There was a question by Jette, who asked if the pandemic can possibly boost circularity. I think we had that question before, but not a very in-depth response. Do we have any thoughts on that? Otherwise, we can, of course, also move to the next question.
Maybe I can make a very quick comment on that. So
yeah,
there is a clear transition in the textile industry. We know that the economy has been affected significantly through this pandemic. But what we have seen in general comment that the companies, the brands has been keeping investing on sustainability and sustainable innovation quite a lot. As a sustainability innovation enabler, we can really see it from that end, that it's really growing. So pandemic has an impact on kind of enabling the or accelerating the circular economy.
I would also like
my side as well, because this is quite an important issue for us at European level. We have really tried to, in our recovery efforts, in all the, let's say, increase in the EU budget to promote both circularity. So I mean circularity, climate change mitigation, and also digitalization, and this concept of building back better, which was also promoted by the OECD and world leaders, is very important for us. As regards circularity, I think that it can really help, because it, in a way, it focused a lot of attention on security of supply and those local chains. And then when there were all these disruptions, for instance, in procuring of various, because supply chains, they spread globally. Basically, a lot of our companies, they get their materials and parts from all over. So actually, it brought a lot of attention on security of supply and how we encourage those small local chains, both on the let's say upper part of the value chain, which is let's say getting your raw materials, and also finding customers. And I hope really that this effect lingers a little bit longer, and it really promotes those let's say more local solutions, because sometimes supply chains can be short. And I think that the business model that Shahryar shared with us is exactly a kind of at least on the upper part of the value chain is quite well controlled and local. And of course, it's also very important to have also local customers, in particular when we are, for instance, talking about food and those more perishable goods, which they have quite a heavy impact on logistics. So I mean, basically, when you transport food, mostly, I mean that is veggies, or it's mostly you transport water, actually. So it's important to develop indeed sometimes more those localized solutions. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. The question on cryptocurrency and the criticism. I mean, it's not about circularity specific. It's a very close problem, like the huge energy use of specific types of blockchain.
Oh, he's gone.
We are without a host.
I can just add while we're waiting that he comes back. I think the main thing is really that if there's a demand for certain products, there will be a supply, I think, and companies are going to undertake research and development to improve products. And I think there's one question in the question answer, whether the price will go down. I think if there's more R&D and more development and more use of it, prices will go down. Like with most products we've seen, or most technologies, that comes very affordable. And I think the second point I would make is that politics can actually take a pioneer role, because public procurement is quite large, quite large amount, and if they promote the demand for more resource efficient or loop orientated production process and products, I think that could be an initializing step towards it. I think we need the other customers as well, obviously, but I think that's on its way as well, because green procurement is a big issue now.
Yeah, on this I cannot agree more. I think that we will really, because at European level what we have is mostly voluntary green public procurement criteria. So basically something which is very much recommendable. But now in the new Circular Economy Action Plan, we also have the idea to go more towards mandatory green public procurement criteria. Of course, there is a little bit of a trade-off, because when we work on voluntary things, then we can be as green as we want. So I mean, and because it's all kind of, and it goes through very well and then smoothly. Once that we start talking about obligation, then the process becomes much more difficult, and we really have to find those elements that truly matter. And we have started actually in the again the battery proposals, which we see a little bit as a blueprint for future product policy regulation. We have foreseen the possibility to develop criteria for green public procurement as a mandatory, let's say, so that actually greener batteries can be chosen, and then this plays really a major role in the decisions of public authorities. So very good point indeed. Thanks. Hello, Luca. Welcome back.
Thanks. Sorry, we lost connection again. Yeah, there seem to be digitalization, internet issues, even in Berlin. So can we please get back to the Q&A session for a second, Carlo? Thank you. Okay. Scroll down a little bit. I think there was one more question. No, up. Oh yeah, okay. We have one last question from Nora, who asked how digital solution can help circular products to get more competitive, because price is a big factor for consumers. Yes, it's true. Maybe she is, I'm not sure if I understand that correctly, but maybe she is hinting at the platform economy and how that kind of changes the way also circular products are sold. Maybe that's a question for you, Shahriar. You are not audible. You have to unmute, please.
Repeat the question, Luca.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I understood her question right, but I would be interested if the emerging platform economy, so the way that we sell or firms sell product to consumers, has fundamentally changed in the past 20 years, and how this new digital in between customer and firm solutions affect the way circular products are sold and your product is sold as well. Maybe we'll have that as our last question before I would like to ask a last question to all of you.
Yeah, I think if we want to make the so-called circularity or circular products, let's say, affordable, I think there are a lot of work to be done in different phases. So I think technology-wise, who are kind of enabling the circular technologies like Spinnova itself, they have a role of process optimization to get it in a better level that it is competitive. I mean, the fiber price should be on that level that is affordable in normal consumer product level. And then definitely the brands has a big role here in order to enable that. Okay, they are sort of promoting these kind of new technologies and bringing it in a more affordable way, because we have seen in textile or fashion industry as such that people are really appreciating the circular product or the sustainable product, but not necessarily going to pay extra for it. So definitely, as Rosalina, John, that has been mentioning quite a few times, that it's also the mindset. So mindset, not only from the policymaker point of view or the industry point of view, even from the consumer point of view. I think this is require a total approach. So, and we are actually looking kind of seeing that change in the mindset on the consumer level also, and in the industry level also. So I think we are in a right path, and you cannot survive with a technology if it is not affordable. It should be on the commercial level, so that you can really replace a certain if a product that has an environmental impact. Let's say in this case, for example, Spinnova can replace, for example, cotton, which has a lot of environmental impact.
Yes. Okay, thanks a lot. As I just mentioned, one question I would like to ask all of you. So as we are already 1 minute or a few minutes over time, please be brief in your response. You can also answer just yes or no if you like. And I would like to know, can digitalization
digitalization is not helping.
I'm also in Berlin. It's working.
I guess the answer is yes, it can.
It cannot, it should at least, right? Yes, it should.
It should.
Yes, exactly. It should. Yes, that's that's a better one.
Was that audible? I think I was interrupted.
No.
Okay,
But
let
we
me
already
try.
have the answer.
Okay, let me try again. I would like to know if you think that digitalization can lead to an absolute decoupling of production and resource use. So while we maintain our level of production or even grow further, can we actually decouple and lower our resource use towards a more circular economy? Can digitalization achieve that? What do you think?
I can go first. I don't think it can on its own. I think it can help if we use it well, but it's an instrument. It's not an end in itself.
Adriana, maybe next.
I think it is an important enabler, but there are other solutions as well. I think we need to work on it, and I think it's not going to be possible, like just looking at the decoupling debate, to decouple as such. I think that's a very high aim, which I think is not realizable as such. So I think a good way is to move forwards towards quality versus quantity instead of quantity. And I think that's something every private person or consumer can kind of take into their considerations when buying things.
Shariat?
Yeah, I think I'm in the same line what John and Adriana said. So pretty much so. It's an enabler solution.
And Rosalina, last word for you.
Thank you. Indeed, very much the same. I mean, the digitalization is great and cool, but it's not a miracle solution to the environmental challenges that we have in our hand. And indeed, although many things go digital and virtual, we still have a major problem in the physical world and use of resources and their environmental impacts. So we should use the tool of digitalization best, and there are very many promising opportunities out there, but let's say squaring the growth equation and how to make sure that our wealth and well-being increases while our footprint on the planet diminishes is a defining question where we will need much more than digital solutions for.
All right, thanks a lot for this super interesting discussion, and I would like all our attendees to go back to the main stage now, where we will have our continuous moderators welcoming you if you don't need a break. And to all our speakers, thanks a lot and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was great to discuss with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you.